Hey everyone, hope everyone's having a good Wednesday. Thanks for joining us today. So our main topic today is going to be going over channel integrations, and we'll be going over any channel specific settings. And then also I'll do a walkthrough setting up our brand new channel with a Shopify store I have. So we'll go through that whole process. If you have any questions or anything isn't clear as I'm going through it, definitely post your questions in the chat or the QA section here on Zoom, and I'll answer those whenever I get a chance to. All right, so let me pull up my Flxpoint account and we'll get started here. All right, so here's my main Flxpoint account. All of our channel integrations, and what I mean by channel integration, I mean a connection to your sales channel. So whether that's a Shopify store, your Amazon store, Walmart, eBay, any of our direct sales channels, you'll integrate as a channel, which is, well, I say consider somewhat of an outbound operation, because we're going to be pushing product data, syncing pricing. There is a bit of a get there where we're going to be pulling orders from that channel as well. But it's I like to think of it as mainly kind of like an outbound. If we're looking at like a left to right scale here, left is going to be your sources. We're pulling that data in. Flxpoint sits in the middle, and we're going to be pushing data out to your sales channels. And then kind of the inverse flow for orders. We'll be pulling orders in from your sales channel in the Flxpoint, pushing those out to your suppliers for fulfillment, and then tracking will do that same flow back from your source in the Flxpoint and out to your sales channel. So connecting your sales channel, each one's a little different. We have our help guides and our system documentation here. If you go into the help section and open this up, this will give you a guide for integrating any of your channels here. So we have a list here that gives you all the setups, any particulars about that channel, and then also the required details. Typically, it's going to be API keys, but every channel is a little bit different on how you access those or generate those. So this should give you a good rundown on how to do that. So going back to our channels tab here, I already have a few test channels set up, but let's go ahead and set up a new Shopify store. And as we go through that, I'll discuss any particular settings that has to do with that channel. And then we can generally look at some other channel settings and take a look at those. So what I like to do when I'm setting up my Shopify store, I go ahead and log into the admin section and have that open in a second tab. And then let's go ahead and follow along on our document here. So for Shopify, we're going to create a private app, get our API key, password, and location ID. So here are the steps to generate this private app in Shopify. So if we go to our Shopify store, we're going to go to the apps section. And then we're going to click Manage Private Apps. I already have a Flxpoint connection to the store, but I'm going to go ahead and just create a new one. So to do that, we'll click Create New Private App. Shopify's taking a second to load. Then we're going to give it a name. If we're setting it up for Flxpoint, it's always a good idea just to put in the Flxpoint name here. I'm going to call it Flxpoint 2 since this is a secondary connection on mine. Emergency developer email. You can always just put support@flxpoint.com here. And then under this admin API section, this is where we actually give permissions for this API key that we're setting up. We're allowing permissions for what it's allowed to interact with on the store. So for our integration, we have a few specifics that we need to set up here. So if we click the Show Inactive Admin API Permissions, we can see everything's set to no access right now. And there's quite a few of them. But if we go to our Shopify as a channel documentation, we have all the permissions that we need to set here. So let's look for fulfillment services and set this to read and write. And then we need inventory, read and write. So fulfillment services allows us to add the tracking information, essentially, so we can read tracking information and update it. Inventory as well, we'll want read and write so we can update inventory quantities. Locations is read access. Locations is useful for if you're using the built-in location setting on Shopify, maybe you have multiple locations set up with different inventory at each. We can link inventory and update inventory to one of those specific locations in the channel connection here. So we just do need read access so we can find those locations and understand how to update those through the API. Orders, we're going to need read access for those so we can actually read your orders and import them. And then products, we need read and write so we can update your products. So those are the main ones that we need to set up for all of our default settings here. And we can see here, this is how what each of those API permissions allow these processes to do. So link products, we need read products to be able to link items. Sync products, we need to be able to write products and write inventory. For publishing, we actually need to be able to read products, and write inventory. For get orders, we're reading orders. And then for syncing orders, which is updating the tracking back to the store, we need write fulfillments. So these just outline which process uses each of those different API keys. So once we have all these set up, we will go ahead and click save. And it's going to say you're creating a private app. That allows access to your store. And while we're waiting on that to refresh, let's go ahead and add a new sales channel connection in Flxpoint. So we'll go ahead and click this plus sign up in the upper left corner, and we'll give it a name. Let's call this Justin's Awesome Shopify Store. Always recommend naming this the name of your store. And then we have a description here. You can put any notes that you feel are necessary here. This doesn't have anything to do with the integration or information that we pass to your channel. It's just internal to Flxpoint here. So we'll save that new channel, and we can see this one's now created with no integrations set up. So if we check back on Shopify, this API, this private app has been created, and now we have our key and password here. We're going to need that as we get to the next steps on setting up this channel. So now that the Shopify private app is ready, we'll go ahead and hit the gear icon next to my Shopify store. And then here you can edit and update the description if you need to. But where we're going to get started is the integrations tab. And you can get started at any point of these. When I'm setting these up, I typically just like to start at the top and work my way down. These top four ones, sync products, get orders, publish products, and sync orders, those are essentially the core operations. So if you're looking to update inventory, publish products to the site, get orders, and sync tracking as kind of your main workflow there, which is pretty typical in drop shipping and really any sort of fulfillment process with the sales channel. These are the four main that you're going to need to set up. You can also set up, send accounting orders to link into QuickBooks to send sales orders from your channel to your accounting service, but that's not required for the integration to fully work with submitting orders and processing fulfillments. The custom export operation, I'll get into that a little bit later on, but it's essentially a way for us to generate an export of products that you have listings built for in your channel in Flxpoint. The main use for this that we see is for folks using repricers. Instead of having to manage two different sets of listings, say you have Amazon as your channel integrated, you can set up this custom export operation. It's a fully customizable file. You can put in the fields that you need, and this generates a HTTP URL export of all the products you have created, or all the listings you have created for that channel. And then we can send that to a repricer. Any of the repricers that you're using, as long as they accept a CSV file import, we can generate that list of products and even specify different pricing for it if we need to in our mapping rules to pass that through to your repricer. So that way your repricer can take over the pricing of products on your sales channel. But getting back to Shopify here, so let's get started with sync products. We'll go ahead and create this one first. So we'll click start creating integrations. And step one here is going to ask us which channel are we connecting to. So we have a lot of pre-built connectors here already, but we're going to use Shopify. And if you've already created a connection previously for a channel, you'll see that saved connection here. But if we want to create a new one, we'll just go ahead and create new connection. Or if we wanted to reuse this one, we can go ahead and collect that and it'll select it as our connection. But we're going to click change and create a new one here. We'll just name this the same, Justin's Awesome Shopify Store. And then connection type is going to be basic auth, where we use the location ID, API key, password, and the store URL. So I just go up for the store URL. I start here, copy this, everything in front of admin, including the HTTPS. We'll go ahead and post that there. And then we'll get the API key from this private app we just created. So we can click this little clipboard icon and copy it. And then we need the API password. And then for location ID, we can actually, oh, can't read the location for some reason there. But what we can do for locations is go to settings and then locations in Shopify. And I'm just going to be using this default location for mine. If I click on that and look at the URL, this is going to be the location ID in the URL, this last numeric value. So we can copy that, paste it right there, and then click Save Connection. And then once I click Save, I just select that connection, and now it knows I want to use this connection for my Shopify store. And next step is going to click Save and Proceed. For Shopify, there's no additional settings here. Some of our other channels, such as Amazon and Walmart, there's some additional settings here for potentially tax codes, handling times, things like that, for different details that we have to specify for those specific channels. So some of those advanced configurations will live under step 2. But for Shopify, we don't have any of those. It's pretty straightforward integration. Then now we have to define a mapping template. We generate default ones in Flxpoint ourselves for you. So if you click create a new mapping template, it's going to generate a default one here. You can always click this button off to the right here and click the mapping template. Again, the mapping template is essentially what values are we passing into the fields on Shopify. So for the compare at price on Shopify, generally we're sending the MSRP. For the cost field in Shopify, we're going to be sending the estimated cost value, which is aggregated across your suppliers if you have products coming from more than one supplier. To the price field on Shopify, we're going to be sending the list price of the item. So the item's retail pricing essentially based on your markups and the value that you want to sell it at. And then quantity, obviously we're going to be passing to the quantity field. So that's default. If you don't want to use a compare at price or you're not using the cost field on Shopify, you can always set these to don't map. Or potentially maybe you're only looking to have quantity updating on your store. You can always turn off pricing as well, or vice versa. Maybe you don't care about quantity syncing and you only want to update pricing. You can do that and mix and match depending on your use case and how you're wanting to do this. But very typically, we're going to be at a minimum updating price and quantity for items. So I'll leave these two mapped for our use case today. Any questions so far on the mapping or the connections on setting these up? Feel free to post in the chat or Q&A if you do have any questions. All right, so we'll keep moving on here. Go ahead and click save on this mapping template. And now we save those changes. We can come back to our sync products screen and click save and complete. Now we've created the sync products. We can go ahead and set this to start running on a schedule if we want. Maybe I want to have this run every hour. We can go ahead and set that now if we want. Or if I want to set everything else up first and maybe do some manual tests with syncing and publishing, you can always leave the schedule off for the time being. And then you can always, through the channel listings page, force a sync on items or force a publish on items if you'd like to do that. So for this example, I'm going to leave this unscheduled and leave that set to no. I'm going to click update, which saves all of our configuration settings that we've made here. And then I'll just go down the line. We'll go to get orders. And we'll click start creating integration. Select Shopify again. And now that connection I created on the sync products integration is already here. So I don't have to go through copying those keys again. If I click view, all the details are filled out here. So I'll just select that one and move on. So here for the get order screen, we do have some additional information or configurations that we can go through. First one's personal identifying information retention. So a lot of marketplaces now are requiring you to delete customer information after a certain amount of time. Obviously, privacy and personal data is of the utmost important right now. Folks are really trying to rein in their information and keep it in the proper hands. So we offer some tools here to help you kind of follow those guidelines and ease your customers' minds a bit. So you can select an option here where we'll delete their information 30 days after receiving shipment, 60 or 90 days. Or if you're using a marketplace that doesn't require you to delete any personal identifying information, you can leave this as indefinitely if you'd like. But for our case, I'm going to go ahead and set it to 30. And another important option here is get orders with an updated status within a certain amount of days, within the last certain amount of days. This is very useful because a lot of times we're making API calls and you could be generating thousands and thousands of orders, over a month. This helps mitigate or cut down on the sync times of getting orders. If we're only looking for orders within a certain amount of days, typically we recommend doing 7. So that way we're only looking for more recent orders. Maybe there's an order that went on hold for a few days, but then got updated recently. Maybe there's a payment issue with them, or there's some other issue that you didn't want to fully process that order yet, or release it for fulfillment yet from your store. So this is just useful to help cut down on those sync times and make sure we're only importing the right number of orders. Or if your store has been active for a very long time, again, you could have thousands of orders in there from years ago. So making sure you set a recent time frame here prevents you from pulling in orders from 5 years ago that you probably don't even care about at this point. And then we can also look at orders with a particular payment status. So obviously, maybe not obviously, but typically we're only going to want to import orders that have been paid, right? That you've received payment for via your sales channel, which means you're ready to start fulfilling this. But maybe you're using different statuses and maybe a slightly different way on your channel. We do provide all these options here, so you can choose a particular one that fits your use case. But the short of it is whatever status you choose here, that's going to be the status we look at for an order, require it to be in the status before we even attempt to import it. So I want to select paid for mine. And then we also have a fulfillment status on top of the financial status. So you can choose to only import orders that have been paid and have a fulfillment status of unfulfilled or maybe unshipped, or potentially even a partial shipment or shipped, depending on your use case there. But usually we're going to be looking at paid and unfulfilled. But again, we have all the options there. And depending on your use case and the statuses that you use on your store right now, you can always select which ones that make sense. So that way we're importing the orders when they're ready and getting the proper ones that you need to import. Then there is an advanced settings drop down here. Some channels have a few more options. On Shopify, we have the ability to upload a tag to the order after we import it. So maybe you have a team of folks working directly on your sales channel. Maybe you have a few other folks working directly in your Flxpoint dashboard. So this is a good way to say, essentially when an order imports, we can upload the tag back to the store so the folks working on your store can see that maybe it's been imported by Flxpoint. So maybe we want to put a tag on it that says received by Flxpoint. And I can't spell received today, or Flxpoint. There we go. So now once we import an order, we're going to upload this tag to it on Shopify. So that way anyone there, or if you're going through the store, can see that, okay, this order has been imported by Flxpoint. And then again, we have a mapping template. We have a default one for it, but we can open this up and take a look at the settings for it. Pretty typical. We're going to import the billing address information to the billing address field in Flxpoint. We have some channel invoice information that we can import when the order was created, shipping cost, price values that have been generated on your store. And then we also have some more order detail fields, when it was created at, any shipping text, order total, things like that. Most of these out of default are fine, but if you have some particular use cases for maybe certain mapping fields to get pushed over, you can definitely update these and possibly put any rules in here that makes sense for your use case. So we'll go ahead and save this as the default, and then we'll save and complete this one. Had a good question come in. That one thing that's important to us is to receive changes in status and not just one time. For example, if an order gets canceled on the channel after it imports into Flxpoint. So that is a limitation right now. It is something that we're working on, or is on our roadmap to take a look at. That is correct. So right now, once an order imports, if there are any other changes after that fact on your sales channel, maybe you've modified an address there or modified the products on the order, we don't receive those changes back in the Flxpoint at this time. It is a limitation right now, but it is something that we're aware of and is on our roadmap to take a look at. I don't have any hard timeline on it yet, but that is something that we are aware of right now. And then we'll wrap up our published products here. Again, we'll select the integration type, select the connection. And then we have some additional settings here. Should additional variant images be added to the products? So depending on your sales channel and how it handles images, maybe they only show parent product images, or maybe they only show variant images. So depending on how you're getting your data from the source and how they specify that, this is an additional option for if there are variant images and apparent images. Should we upload both, or just skip one or just skip variant images and only load parent images? I'm going to leave this default to yes for what we're doing today. And then we also have a way to create smart collections based on the product type of products in Flxpoint. So this will make sense when we look at the mapping template here. But if we're uploading products, typically category 1 is going to be added as a product type on the item. And then Flxpoint will create a smart collection, as it's called in Shopify, that automatically creates that collection, which in Shopify collections are pretty much categories. So we'll create a collection based on product type that uses that category name from Flxpoint, creates that product type on Shopify, and then creates the collection based on that product type. And if we take a look at this mapping template, you can see it's set up here with our title, our description, going over to the body HTML field. We're going to be copying over images and options. And then here's the product type. So we're going to be mapping category 1 to that. And then we can map category 2 as tags for the items, depending on how you're going to be doing your filtering or your tags, or essentially your subcategories on Shopify. Typically, we see category 1 being a collection, and then the subcategories being tags for your further filters on your channel. we'll save this one. And then our last one is going to be syncing orders. And again, we'll select our integration type, then we'll select our connection that we just created. No additional settings for the syncing orders. And we'll create a mapping template here and take a look at this. So we have a fulfillment option here. When we update the tracking information to your store, do we want to trigger the notification on your channel to go out to the customer? Again, this is a notification that comes from Flxpoint or from our system. It's just a flag that we send via the API to Shopify or your channel that triggers a workflow on your channel to send the shipment notification to your customer. So very, very common use case here that we want to leave this as true. But for whatever reason that you don't want us to update tracking to the channel for all orders, you can always set this to false if you'd like. And then we have the tracking company set up as the carrier field, tracking number from our tracking number in Flxpoint. And if there's a URL, we will pass that along as well. And we'll save this. Any questions so far? If anything wasn't clear, feel free to post that in the chat or Q&A. All right, so that was all the channel connections for Shopify. But I did want to take a look at a few of our other channels configuration settings here. So I already have an Amazon store set up on this side. If I take a look at our published products. So here in the configuration settings is the marketplace ID for Amazon. So that's particular to the country this Amazon store you're selling on. So I know the US store ends in 0 DER. And if we take a look at our Amazon integration here, our Amazon documentation gives you these values here for the marketplaces. So you would just copy one of these. If I know I'm selling on Amazon US, post that in there. If we take a look at some of our other ones, let's change this to WooCommerce. WooCommerce has some attribute fields that there's a limit to only 27 characters in there. So you can say skip the attribute if it's greater or just truncate it. And then we also have the ability to upload attributes from Flxpoint as custom attributes on WooCommerce. So all the channels have some different configurations there. If there's any question on those or any confusion, definitely feel free to reach out to our support team. If the documentation just isn't making it clear enough, or you just need clarification on one part of it, definitely feel free to reach out, whether it's an email or one of our scheduled support calls. And someone from our team member, possibly me, be able to hop on and help clarify that for you and figure out the right use case for what you're trying to accomplish. So that's the walkthrough on creating channel configurations. Now I'll open it up. If anyone has any other questions about channels or any other questions in general on Flxpoint, I'll be happy to answer those now. So I'll give you all a few minutes to post any of your questions in the chat or Q&A right now. Oh, I already had a good question come in, so I'll take a look at this here. Once you have a catalog of items, how easy is it to start listing items in a new sales channel? What is the difference between publishing and listing? Publishing and listing is the same thing. I think you might have said publishing, or meant to say publishing and linking. But essentially, now that I have the new channel created, so that Shopify store connection that I just created on here, you can now see it here under our channel listings. And if I select that, I don't have any listings created for it right now. So again, I would go back to our product catalog, and for whichever items I'm looking to either link to pre-existing items on that channel, you know, if I'm already working with a supplier and I already have their items on my store, or if I'm trying to publish new items. So again, I would select these from the product catalog and create listings for that channel. So if I choose my new awesome Shopify store, I use the virtual or product listing builder that I've created previously. And then the link listings. This is what establishes a connection between the listing that you're creating in Flxpoint and a pre-existing listing you already have on your website. So we can use several different values here. Typically, we're going to look at SKU from Flxpoint and look at SKU on Shopify. Or maybe I know my UPCs will match and I'm using UPC in the barcode field on Shopify. I can specify that here. So as Flxpoint creates the listings on this page here, you'll see them start to populate. After it creates those, it's going to run the link listings job, which is what looks at those two fields and does a comparison. And if it finds a match, it'll update to listed on the channel listings, or potentially you might have that item hidden on Shopify or your sales channel, and that status will update accordingly based on what you have on your website. The one thing it doesn't do during the link listings is it doesn't push any data to your site. So if you have a quantity or a price on your website currently, and that is different based on maybe some rules or maybe a new supplier you have on Flxpoint, that's not going to sync up automatically until we either see a change in price or quantity from the supplier, which triggers a sync to happen on that item. Or what I recommend too, if after you link all your items, if you want to make sure just all your quantity and pricing is in sync with everything that you already have on your sales channel, you just select all the items for that channel. Let's have some on an old Shopify store here. If I select all these, I can go up to actions and go to edit and force a PQS update, which is going to force an update on price and quantity for those items. So that way I know everything that I have in Flxpoint that is linked to existing listings on my website will now be in sync based on the data that I have in Flxpoint for those items. Hope that answers that question. And if there's anything else, any other general Flxpoint questions, any part of the system, definitely post them in the chat, and I will answer those for you. While we're waiting on those, definitely check out our YouTube page. Travis, our CEO, Matt, our CTO, and Austin, our head of partnerships, has been pumping out a few podcasts here over the last few weeks, the Modern Merchant podcast. They've had a few, actually had some really good topics come up recently. I think the one yesterday was kind of some myths of drop shipping. Be sure to check that one out. And there's a few others posted. And then also all of these weekly webinars have been posted there. I think we've done about 10 so far on all different topics. So you'd be able to review those and take a look at any of those. And then we're going to have some new ones coming up here shortly. Next week, I'm going to be out of the office, but Brian, who helped out a few weeks ago on our category mapping webinar, he'll be in to go over invoices next week. And then the following weeks, I don't know for certain yet, but we might have some new features coming out that I will probably be reviewing. So be on the lookout for those. If not, we'll have some other topics to discuss there. All right, so I'm not getting any more questions from anyone else. So we'll cut this one short today. I really appreciate everyone joining. I hope this covered any questions or cleared up any confusion you may have had about adding new channels. Again, if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to our support team, schedule a call, and we'll be happy to help you out and get everything squared away for you. Hope everyone has a good rest of your week, and we'll see you next week.